We're glad you're here to this introduction to OWASP. During this brief course on entomology, you will gain an understanding of OWASPs. We'll learn about the cycles, the behaviors, the threats, how to handle them, what you should do should you become infested, and what is your best line of defense. But first, let's meet the team. I'm Terry Smith, Blackbaud's Principal Security Awareness Program Manager, and I'm responsible for running our simulated fish program, human risk management, security communications, security training, and the reason you're here, OWASP training. I'm joined today by Elizabeth Ballenger, or as we like to call her, the Queen of Customer Trust. Elizabeth leads our Security Customer Trust team, a team that is 100% dedicated to serving our customers by supporting the security inquiries and sharing the latest security and best practice updates from Blackbaud. So let's get started. Let's start with a bit of entomology humor. Where does a bee sit?
Hey, Terry, I don't think we're here to talk about insects. I think we're here to talk about bugs in software that present vulnerabilities.
We're not? We're not talking about bees and wasps?
No, we're not.
Well, that certainly changes things. I'm going to need a moment. I'll be right back. Now, where's that slide deck? Oh, here it is. Let's go ahead and get started. Since we're not talking about bees, wasps, and other bugs, let's talk about OWASP. We all get better with training, and that goes for training our developers too. Every year at Blackbaud, developers participate in OWASP training to learn more about best practices for secure application development. OWASP, also known as the Open Web Application Security Project, is a nonprofit organization that works to improve the security of software. Their top 10 list is certainly the gold standard when it comes to defining the most critical security risks to web applications. OWASP is generally recognized by engineers as the first step towards secure coding and secure systems. It sets the standards for code review guidelines and frameworks for anyone involved in the creation, the development, testing, implementation, and support of applications. Some of the benefits of following OWASP include strengthening applications against cyber attacks. It reduces the rate of operational failures in systems. It contributes to stronger encryption and increases the potential for application success. The impact of insecure coding practices is widespread and, quite frankly, disastrous, as we know. It results in product loss, product recalls, loss of revenue, loss of sensitive customer data, and, quite frankly, bad publicity. Believe me, we at Blackbaud understand that breaches happen. While I cannot speak about our situation from a few years back, I can say that we have been and continue to improve our security position through software, hardware, processes, and people. But let's talk about another example I can speak of. I'm sure we're all familiar with the 2017 Equifax breach, where malicious individuals accessed personal information because of compromised software. Hackers were able to use the exploit to gain access to internal servers on Equifax's network because the new version of the vulnerable software had not yet been applied. This breach resulted in exposed personal data for over 147 million people, financial losses of over $1 billion, and irreparable damage to their reputation. Equifax certainly isn't the first organization, nor will they be the last to be impacted by holes in secure code practices that left them open to exploitation. According to a 2019 survey, 1 in 4 companies confirmed or suspected a web application breach related to open source components. This number is truly staggering when you consider the odds that an organization will experience a breach if they don't implement best practices for coding security. Poor coding practices can affect software of all types, though, not just what we use at work. It runs our smart homes, our smart devices, our cars, our financial applications, and our healthcare applications, just to name a few. Personally, I hope those developers of those applications are well trained in OWASP. Does OWASP change? The answer to that question is a resounding yes. As you can see from this chart, vulnerabilities change with respect to position. As threat actors learn how to exploit a given vulnerability, it may rise in the rankings even up to number 1. Conversely, as software developers write code to mitigate a potential exploit, that vulnerability may drop down or even drop off the top 10 list altogether. So how often should you train your developers in OWASP top 10? I believe it's prudent to conduct training annually. In some cases, it may even be required by law and audits such as PCI. Training is great, but we need to take action based on the results. We can use feedback from the training platform to discover our development team's weaknesses and provide additional customized training for particular exploits. How do we know if the training made a difference? Well, first of all, it's necessary to establish a SAST-DAST baseline. After training and allowing adequate time for addressing the issues, we should retest the software for comparative purposes. The number of the specific exploits we were concerned about should have been reduced. If you're not familiar with SAST and DAST, don't worry, we'll talk more about that momentarily. Here's Elizabeth to talk about software perspectives, development lifecycle with respect to secure coding practices, and SAST-DAST. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Terry. So let's take a minute to talk about the different priorities and approaches that security professionals, developers, and hackers all have when it comes to developing software. A security professional's goal for software development is to maintain the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information resources in order to enable the successful business operation. So the good old CIA triad. They want to ensure that software being developed is secure and is resilient against potential threats. A developer's primary focus is on designing, coding, and testing software to meet functional requirements and to deliver a quality product. Development teams approach an application based on what it is intended to do. On the flip side, hackers are more interested in what an application can be made to do, exploiting vulnerabilities and weaknesses in software to gain unauthorized access, steal data, disrupt operations, or cause other harm. All of that really annoying stuff that they do. They operate on the principle that any action not specifically denied is allowed. In order to address and counteract this belief, additional elements need to be integrated into all stages of the software development lifecycle and not just as an afterthought when it's time to deploy. As we know, security flaws, they can be introduced at any stage of the SDLC. Some of these flaws might include not identifying security requirements up front, creating conceptual designs that have logic errors, using poor coding practices that introduce technical vulnerabilities, deploying the software improperly, or introducing flaws during maintenance or updating, among other things. And these vulnerabilities can have a scope beyond the software itself. Exploitation can include compromises to any of the following: the software, its associated information, operating systems of associated servers, the backend database, other applications in a shared environment, the user system, other software that the user interacts with. The list really goes on. Because of this, OWASP emphasizes addressing security at all stages of the development lifecycle to ensure comprehensive security measures are taken. So let's look at some ways that security can be baked into all phases of the SDLC. In the planning phase, security requirements should be included as part of the initial project requirements. In those initial conversations, you want to start talking about potential threats, defining security goals, specifying security controls that are needed to protect the application and its data from the outset. In the analysis phase, decisions around which frameworks, languages, and technologies should be used are also made. It's important to determine which vulnerabilities or insecure coding practices may be relevant to the selected resources for the project. For example, some technologies may not be compatible with security tools that you're already using in your organization. So if you're not considering the implications here, you can potentially threaten the security of all technologies chosen during this phase and those that are incorporated at later stages of the cycle. In the design phase, beginning with security in mind helps to minimize disruption to workflows later. During this phase, it's important to consider secure design patterns, secure data storage, and secure communication protocols, as well as to implement proper access control mechanisms. The development phase focuses on secure coding practices and offers resources and tools to help developers write secure code. OWASP promotes practices such as input validation, output encoding, secure authentication, session management, and secure error handling. Another important part of secure coding that Terry alluded to before is thorough security testing. Organizations should be conducting different types of security testing, including static analysis and dynamic analysis. So the SAST and DAST that he referred to earlier. OWASP also provides tools and methodologies for conducting these tests effectively. We will talk about SAST and DAST strategies and their place in secure coding in a bit. OWASP also recommends secure deployment practices, not limited to, but including securely configuring your servers, frameworks, and components, implementing secure configurations for databases and other infrastructure, and following secure deployment practices. Using automation to ensure consistent and secure deployments is also recommended. And finally, for maintenance, organizations should implement logging and monitoring mechanisms to detect and respond to security incidents promptly. Regular vulnerability scanning, patch management, and secure coding practices during maintenance and updates should also be implemented. By addressing security at each stage of the software development lifecycle, OWASP aims to create a holistic approach to application security. It helps organizations integrate security as an integral part of the development process, reducing the risk of vulnerabilities and improving the overall security posture of web applications. And we've been teasing this slide a bit, the SAST and DAST. So another strategy that OWASP recommends as part of its secure software development lifecycle is SAST and DAST. SAST, or Static Application Security Testing, analyzes program source code to identify security vulnerabilities, like those that are identified in OWASP's top 10 list. SAST can continually monitor source code vulnerabilities for insecure coding practices or violations of security best practice for developing software. And it supports compliance with data protection laws like HIPAA and PCI. So on the other hand, DAST, also known as Dynamic Application Security Testing, evaluates running software applications. DAST testing simulates the actions of a bad actor who's trying to break into your application. DAST can scan the applications in real time against the OWASP top 10 and other vulnerability sources to find flaws or open vulnerabilities. The main difference between SAST and DAST is how they perform the security testing. SAST scans the application code at rest to identify code that might pose a threat, and DAST tests the running application with no access to the source code. SAST cannot discover runtime and environmental vulnerabilities, but DAST can. So you can see why it's important to run SAST and DAST scans, and both of these methods really have a place in secure coding and in software development. So every year, OWASP updates their list of top 10 most critical web application security risks, along with remediation guidance. So this is a standard awareness document for developers and web application security. It represents a broad consensus about the most critical security risks to web applications. OWASP follows a collaborative and community-driven approach to reach that consensus on the top 10 threats. The process involves several steps to ensure that the final list is comprehensive and that it represents a wide range of experts and practitioners in application security. Many of the individuals who are involved are volunteers, and part of the process also involves a public call for feedback. So not only are there opportunities to training on OWASP practices, but there are also opportunities to contribute to the list each year. And here's just an example of the latest OWASP top 10 list. If you want to take a look. So who really should take OWASP training? It's a simple answer. Anyone who contributes to the code base. At Blackbaud, we have over 1,000 individuals completing OWASP training over a 7-week period every year. It's quite the task to facilitate. We use an external partner to provide up-to-date training, and each individual is encouraged to complete training in their native coding language first, and then to challenge themselves in other coding languages. Skills can be tested in over 30 coding languages, so there are lots of opportunities to learn something new. The training provider that we use also includes hands-on labs that provide opportunities to build skills, and the system also provides immediate feedback of the developer skills as they participate in the labs. So how do you get started? There's a lot of information about OWASP, and it's just a quick Google search away. A great resource to review is the Secure Coding Practices Quick Reference Guide. This guide is a technology agnostic set of general software security coding practices, and it's in a comprehensive checklist format. This can be integrated into the development lifecycle. The focus here is on secure coding requirements rather than on vulnerabilities or exploits. It's designed to serve as secure coding kickstart tool and easy reference guide, just to help development teams quickly understand secure coding practices. To take it up a level, another option is to complete OWASP training. Another Google search, this time for OWASP training providers. You'll find that there are many free trainings along with a host of affordable providers with varying styles of training. You can choose a provider that best fits your organization's needs and budget requirements. So don't just take our word for it. We asked some of our developers for feedback on their experience with our OWASP training. Some of the common threads we heard was that OWASP training really prepared them and provided them with the knowledge they need to incorporate secure coding practices into development. They appreciate the opportunity to not only find out what they are good at, but also finding out which skills need more work. One of our developers said, "This training allows our users to train using the frameworks and program languages that they use for everyday tasks, in addition to giving them visualization on how an attacker can infiltrate code to help better simulate and enhance the importance of producing secure code and being proactive." OWASP training helps our developers feel more prepared to mitigate known vulnerabilities. Your development team is the first line of defense when it comes to secure software coding. With OWASP training, they will be prepared to hold their shields high. So thanks so much. I think we have a little bit of time for questions.
Elizabeth, we have a couple of questions that came in. You ready?
Okay.
How often does OWASP update the list?
Okay, so I misspoke earlier in our presentation. So thank you for bringing this one back up. So I said it was every year. We do training every year. So that's really important to note. But OWASP updates the list. It really depends on severity and what the consensus is, but it's typically every 2 years. And in my research, I did see that the 2023 list is underway, and the call for public feedback has already begun.
So here's another question. How long does each developer spend in OWASP training? And I can answer that one since I run the training. On average, it's 47 minutes. Some of our developers challenge themselves in languages they may not be as comfortable, so it takes a little bit longer. Others are a little bit more adept. But on average, it's 47 minutes across the board.
Cool. And let's see. Oh, here's one too. Who provides your OWASP training platform? Tara, do you want to speak to that one too?
Yeah, I'll address that one as well. While we can't endorse a given provider, I can say that we use Secure Code Warrior. We found them to be it fits in our budget, as well as they give us great hands-on training with the labs that they produce. So we're comfortable with them, but there are many out there. So pick and choose what's right for you and your organization.
Awesome. Any other questions? This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Were any of you worried that we were going to talk about bees and wasps and hornets the whole time? Or?
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining us to learn a bit more about our OWASP program, and enjoy the rest of BB Dev Days.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us, everyone.